Witchers have been a part of the Witcher world for as long as there were monsters to fight, as monsters, as you know, only appeared in this world after the conjunction of spheres. Although, it's uncertain whether the creation of Witchers was an intended end result, because the mages responsible for the Witcher mutations were in fact Alzur and Cosimo Malaspina. And although Cosimo was credited with the lion's share of the work, Alzur was well known for his unintended inventions, such as the Vige of Maribor, a giant centipede that destroyed the elven city that formed the base of Maribor. He also created Kosches and Frighteners, all in the name of science, of course, even though he knew the Frightener was dangerous, as the first specimen was in fact created by Dagobert Sulla, the renegade mage and student of the Zerrikanian Masters of Alchemy, and also supervisor of the Trial of the Grasses at Kaer Morhen. Fortunately, Witchers were a little less monstrous than most of his creations, although of course the first Witchers might have been slightly different than the ones we know today. As Triss notes when she writes for Kaer Morhen, the mutagenic elixirs had been concocted by some renegade wizards in the distant past and then perfected over the years by the wizard's successors. Not everyone agrees that Witchers are in fact less monstrous than regular monsters, however. When Geralt and Dandelion visit a little village in the Valley of the Flowers, an old lady reads the following passage from a very, very old book, describing monsters such as Witchers. A witchman, called by some a Witcher. To summon him is most dangerous, albeit one must, for when against the monster and the vermin there be no aid, the witchman can contrive. But careful one must be to touch not the witchman, for thus the mange can one acquire. And lasses do from him hide away, for lustful the witchman is above all measure, though the witchman greatly covetous and greedy for gold be. Giveth ye not such a one more than, for a drowner 1 silver penny or 3 halves, for a weircat silver pennies 2, etc. The passage was accompanied by an etching showing a dishevelled monstrosity with enormous eyes and even larger teeth riding a horse. In its right hand, the monstrous being wielded a substantial sword, in its left, a bag of money. Propaganda like this is what caused the peasants at the time to get riled up enough to attack Kaer Morhen, the Witcher's fortress in the Kedweni Mountains. Although the attack itself was led by mages, who even wrote an entire book on Witchers and how despicable they were, called Monstrum, or a description of the Witcher. Verily, there is nothing so hideous as the monster so contrary to nature, known as Witchers. For they are the offspring of foul sorcery and devilry. They are rogues without virtue, conscience, or scruple, true diabolic creations, fit only for killing. There is no place amidst honest men for such as they. And Kaer Morhen, where these infamous beings nestle, where they perform their foul practices, must be wiped from the surface of this earth, and all trace of it strewn with salt and saltpeter. Reading further in said book, we might also surmise that the mages had religious motivations, as they write, "The easiest access they find at cottages of honest, simple and unwitting peasants who readily ascribe all misfortune and ill events to spells, unnatural creatures and monsters, the doings of wind sprites or evil spirits. Instead of praying to the gods, instead of bearing rich offerings to the temple, such a simpleton is ready to give his last penny to the base witcher, believing the witcher, the godless changeling, will turn around his fate and save him from misfortune." And they go on to suggest that witchers in fact love to inflict pain and suffering, comparing the emotions they feel during torture as something an honest man would only feel with their wives in the bedroom. So clearly, witchers are hellspawn. Before the attack on Kaer Morhen, the keep housed 23 fully trained witchers and 40 students, along with some mages and blacksmiths, of course. None of the witchers present survived. They killed even the children. Vesemir, who played dead among the corpses, was overlooked and walked away with his life. The witchers that were away on the path at the time also survived, of course, although there weren't many. Among them were Geralt, Eskel, and Lambert. From the attack itself, all we know is that it was led by several mages and it involved a horde of furious peasants. We do, however, have 3 eyewitness accounts. Right before the attack on Kaer Morhen, a wolf witcher by the name of Vesemir, the extremely strict and somewhat cruel fencing trainer at the time, was busy forging the legendary wolf school armor first created by the equally legendary witcher Elgar, one of the first witchers. Their resident mage, Hieronymus, and his assistant Caer were helping him with that. But right before he went to pick up the first piece of armor, the signal horn sounded to signal an attack. But Vesemir figured he must be drunk, for who would attack a keep full of witchers? Hieronymus, in the meantime, while working on ways to replicate the armor created by Elgar, finds the chamber where Elgar once resided. Here he finds notes on where Elgar had hidden the wolf school diagrams as well, but as he goes about distributing the diagrams they already have, he sees fire on the horizon. The way down from his tower is blocked off, and in the end, as a final attempt to escape, he jumps through an unstable, underpowered portal to his death. He believes it's still a better option than being found by the angry mob. Caer, Hieronymus' assistant, finds himself in the midst of the battle as he writes his final journal entry. I write in great haste, for each moment might bring my demise. A band of peasants wielding all manner of sharp or heavy farmyard implements has stormed the keep. I was in the workshop when they attacked, working on a new silver sword diagram, and did not notice the mob's approach. I have barricaded the doors, but know this cannot last forever. I can only hope Vesemir will come and rescue me before they break through. But of course, Vesemir also perished during the attack. Now, it is well known that nobody but the Witcher's caste knows how to find Kaer Morhen, well, aside from the few elves that still remember it as Caer Morhen, Old Sea Keep, which is elder speech of course. So, how is it that the peasants found the keep in the first place? There is no direct proof either way. Unfortunately, we might speculate that the mages knew how to trace witchers, as renegade mages worked with the witchers to create new witchers, craft potion recipes, and work on diagrams. Mages can read each other's auras, not to mention portal traces, and it was clear that Hieronymus was experimenting with portals in his tower as well. Alternatively, someone might have just told them. While exploring around Kaer Morhen, we happen upon a herb garden that once belonged to Hieronymus himself. Concealed behind an illusionary spell, we find a letter to a woman called Lesbeth. From the letter, we can tell that Lesbeth was very interested in Hieronymus' garden, which he magically turned into a heated greenhouse, and in the PS, Hieronymus invites her to come and visit her. He notes that, although the witchers have made him swear on all that is holy not to reveal where Kaer Morhen lies, he could trust his dear Lesbeth. But what do we know of this Lesbeth? Nothing, except that she is likely a sorceress as well. She could very well be an informant of the mages trying to attack Kaer Morhen. It wouldn't be the first time mages have used pretty girls to gain information from unwitting targets. However they found out, in the end, Kaer Morhen was reduced to a pile of rubble, with a moat filled with skeletons of the slain witchers. And all that was left of the wolf school was their fencing trainer Vesemir and a few witchers on the path. A terrible blow to the witcher caste, no doubt, but even worse, these attacks did not seem to be limited to the wolf school alone. While before it was assumed that Kaer Morhen was the main witcher base where all witchers were created, we can no longer assume so, as we now know the cat school was in fact also attacked and a massacre ensued. And there is little reason to assume other schools were spared a similar fate. As we know, Letho's aim in aiding the Emperor of Nilfgaard was to rebuild the School of the Viper, which means that this school was also the subject of an attack of some sort. In a letter sent to Gaytan of the School of the Cat, Joel, another cat witcher, states the following. It's over. Soldiers have taken the school. They killed Axel and Cedric. As for Schrödinger, well, I can't say for sure, might be alive, might be dead. Bounties have been put on your head and mine. Avoid cities and the high roads, don't attract any attention. At least he could still make a Schrödinger joke amidst all the bloodshed. Someone seems to be out to drive the witchers to extinction. You meet Gaytan later after he's been double-crossed by some of his employers, and he's disposed of said employers and the rest of the village. The villagers had tasked him with killing a Leshen, and when he did and came to collect his pay, they instead tried to kill him and take his possessions. No doubt the bounty on his head was of interest too. Ironically, they tried to kill him with a pitchfork, the same weapon that killed Geralt so many years ago. If you choose not to kill Gaytan, Geralt will note that he is sometimes referred to as the Butcher of Blaviken, wrongly of course, and that sometimes heads just roll. At this point, Witchers, at least most of them, have accepted the fact that most people just want them dead. But why? And why are mages aiding them of all people? Sorcerers created Witchers in the first place. One reason might simply be because while Witchers were indeed created by renegade mages, the regular mages, those sitting on the council and those part of the Brotherhood, did not in fact like Witchers at all. When Geralt visits Istred, a renowned sorcerer himself, Istred explains that sorcerers and sorceresses don't like people such as shamans, enchanters, healers, witches and witchers because sorcerers had to work day and night from a very young age in terrible circumstances to master the art of magic, and they hate seeing others use even the most incompetent form of magic. And while that may sound like a petty reason to exterminate witchers, sorcerers and sorceresses aren't exactly known to be reasonable or level-headed when it comes to things they love or hate with any form of passion. We know that most true magic users also didn't choose to be taught in the art of magic of their own free will. Just like witchers, they were simply discovered and sent away. Although unlike Ban-Ard and Aretuza, the mage schools, Witcher recruits didn't even necessarily have to show any form of skill or talent to be selected for Witcher training. They just had to be there. Although parents often simply sent their unwanted children, or children they could no longer afford to feed, to the Witcher schools, a lot of times children were taken through the law of surprise. A Witcher may demand payment through this law, which states either one of two things. You will give me the first thing that comes to greet you, which could be anything from a dog to a mother-in-law, or you will give me what you find at home yet don't expect, which in many cases was a child. This child would then be taken to the Witcher home to be trained and mutated. Most of them were very young when they were taken, with their trials commencing as early as 8 years old sometimes. These sort of antics often resulted in Witchers hating their own kind, like Lambert and Berengar, who feel cheated by life. This young age might seem strange, as surely a child would have to be quite strong to survive the mutations. As is stated quite often, most Witcher recruits die during the trial of the grasses. And that's true, which is why the children first receive exceptionally harsh training to prepare their bodies. Witcher creation is in fact a 3-stage process. The first, ironically enough, is called the choice. Harsh training and a diet of special mushrooms, mosses and herbs the mages grew in the laboratory. No mutations occur, but muscle growth and digestion is accelerated, which improves the body's general condition. Even still, some recruits die during this phase too, through liver or heart failure due to their diet, or by simply dying during the training. The trail is a long path encircling Kaer Morhen with many obstacles along the way. Witcher recruits had to run this path as part of their physical training as well, mainly to improve their running speed and controlled breathing. Unfortunately, many young Witchers died on the trail, earning it the nickname the Killer instead. After their bodies were sufficiently strengthened to give them the best possible chance of survival, the second part of the trial started, the infamous Trial of the Grasses. The Trial of Grasses is the main reason no new Witchers can be created, as well as it's the reason young boys feared becoming a Witcher. The Witcher recruit is bound to a wooden table. The one at the Wolf School was called Sad Albert, and then incisions are made in their veins to insert the tubes attached to the vials containing the potions. The ingredients to the trial's potions are 1 bottle of forktail spinal fluid, 1 manticore poison gland, 1 albino bruxat tongue, 3 bryona, 4 rib leaf, and 2 mandrake roots. The ingredients then produce 3 potions: the Mother's Tears, wild rye juice, and speargrass sap. They can be administered in any order, but they must be used immediately after brewing because the potions are strongly reactive. Before starting the trial, a hookweed extract is given to the Witcher-to-be to deaden the pain. If one attempts to start the trial without hookweed, it's likely the pain will send the Witcher in shock, killing them in the process. Even so, nosebleeds and vomiting regularly occur during the trials. If you stop the trial process mid-progress, the Witcher also dies, painfully. And even if the Witcher recruit survives the trials, which only 4 out of 10 do, there's still a chance they come out of it crippled or mentally damaged. During and after the trial, magic is used to stabilize the body, and as the potions do their work, the body will attain lightning-fast reflexes and reaction times, as well as a greatly reduced heart rate. The full process can take up to several days, however. So as you might have guessed, the trials are quite harrowing, and Eskel recalls being quite shocked when Geralt's hair turned white during his trial. And for some reason, mutating into a Witcher also causes your touch to produce a slight but pleasant tingling sensation, and that effect differs from Witcher to Witcher. Eskel's touch apparently is extra tingly. The potions and the magic used afterwards, however, are only the first half of the Witcher mutation process. Yennefer of Vengerberg explained it like this. Imagine a lump of clay. In order to shape it, you must first moisten it or it will crumble. The trial's initial part does just that. It opens the body to change, so to speak. Only then can the mutagens produce a Witcher. The potions ensure that the mages can build their perfect weapon. In theory, this means that depending on the mutagens used afterwards, they could give them a wider range of abilities. Not just the ones we see in regular Witchers. Like, give them the ability to breathe fire. If a fire-breathing mutagen was available, of course. Perhaps they would have done just that if dragons were around more than they are. No doubt they would also add a mutagen to make Witchers more adept at underwater fighting. As it is, they're very badly equipped to do so, which is a shame, as sea monsters are the most aggressive creatures. The mutagens the mages used in the case of Witchers affect the eyes, bone marrow, and hormones, allowing Witchers to see in the dark, heal quickly, and become extremely resistant to poisons, diseases, and all sorts of magical effects, like the water of Broccolon the Dryads used to turn humans into Dryads. They do also become infertile in the process, which, although you might expect this is common knowledge, not a lot of people know about. Calanthe of Sintra, for example, once suggested to Geralt that Witchers should just only train Witcher children to become Witchers. The mutations also allow them to cast simple spells, the Witcher signs, and their lifespan is increased tremendously. It's a common misconception that Witchers required their medallion to cast signs, but that's not the case, however. It simply comes with the mutation package. You do, however, need functional fingers. Leo, a Wolf School initiate who sadly died early into his Witcher initiation, was unable to cast signs as he'd broken his fingers during training. It is also believed that Witchers cannot feel anything. Even most Witchers believe that. My personal theory on this, however, and mind you, this is speculation on my part, is that since the nerve system is attacked viciously during the trial of the grasses, this might very well impact a Witcher's capability to, for example, cry. However, I don't believe the mutations themselves strip Witchers from all emotions. If anything, I believe the fact that they get ripped away from home at an extremely young age to be put through a brutal training program, where they see their friends die around them, has a much larger impact on their emotional state of being. And after their training, when their trial of the grasses starts, they are put through what can only be described as torture, only to watch more of their friends die afterwards, if they even survive themselves. They're then sent off alone on the path to kill monsters for people that clearly despise them. They're used as tools. Lambert clearly still has emotions as he gets angry quite a lot. Geralt clearly still has emotions as he loves Yennefer and Ciri dearly. Eskel clearly still has emotions as he is torn between saving his child surprised daughter of fate or continuing to live the Witcher life without dealing with her. Vesemir clearly still has emotions as he sacrifices his life to save Ciri. So personally, I don't think Witcher mutations strip anyone of emotions. The process of becoming a Witcher as a whole simply impacts them severely, making them seem uncaring to most except those closest to them. It's not entirely too different to sorcerers and sorceresses, who are also seen as very cold quite often, and they go through a lot of the same things Witchers do as well. But personal opinions aside, while explaining it like this, it seems like a relatively simple procedure, in sorcerer terms at least. But everything has to be very precisely executed, and it's definitely not easy to replicate, although many have tried. Sorcerers from around the world have often tried to get their hands on Witcher's secrets, not because they specifically wanted to create more Witchers, but because the power of mutation had so many other applications. In fact, Ortolan, an ancient sorcerer and great admirer of Idaran of Ulivo, apprentice to Alzur, aimed to enhance humanity to such an extent that everyone would be forever happy. Once he even tried to get a hold of a pair of Witcher eyes, Geralt's to be precise, so he could examine them and use the information to improve everyone's eyes. Eskel also mentions that Triss would likely use their secrets for healing purposes. However, at the same time, he realizes that even discoveries and inventions made with the best of intentions can prove a deadly weapon in the wrong hands, which is why the Witchers guard their secrets so fiercely. Exactly how difficult it is to replicate Witcher mutations and how dangerous it can be to even try, we see when Jacques the Aldersberg, Grand Master of the Flaming Rose, hires a Zerrikanian sorcerer and his cronies to steal the Witcher's secrets, so they can create an army of superhumans of their own. They try to create their own trial of the grasses to this end, but they failed several times quite spectacularly. In the end, they managed to make something resembling Witchers, at least in strength and speed, although they were neither very intelligent nor easy on the eyes. And you might think that after the trials and the mutagens, a Witcher could be done. But unfortunately, a Witcher might still die during their final trial, where they are sent to the Circle of Elements to empower their Witcher amulet. During that final trip, some of the recruits still died to monsters they run into on the way, as the course is specifically set through a dangerous area. One of them was Voltaire, a friend of Lambert who lost his life to a cyclops named Old Speartip in the caves north of Kaer Morhen. The trial information so far has all been taken from the Wolf School, of course. There is certainly a chance that other schools use different mutagens as they favor different attributes. But I'll tell you about the different Witcher schools in the next video. What do you think caused the mages to lead an attack against the Witcher schools? Do you think it was an organized effort from mages across the land? Or perhaps it was even a setup constructed by the council? Do you think Witchers really don't have any emotion? I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we talked about so far, and perhaps we can do another video after we've thoroughly talked about everything Witcher School to talk about some of those theories as well. But until then, Vathel!